Hey, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
There's not a lot of everybody here, but that's okay. That makes it work out just fine. All right, so welcome to our next chat clinic. I think we only had about 10 people or so sign up for tonight, so that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm guessing that there's a lot of the veterans are like, yeah, I kind of know what tools we already need, and I don't need to show up, and so that's fine. But I think we'll go through that. That means we'll also have a lot of times for questions. So good evening, Joe, by the way.
Hello. How you doing?
So there are a couple of people I hadn't seen on here before. So Joe Varnell is the first senior mentor for North Texas. And so glad to have him here as well. And just a minute while I get my stuff set up here. Um, uh, and then the kickoff was this past weekend. So I know a lot of people are busy looking at the game and starting to study, and teams are rapidly designing, and there are many teams are already posting videos of the robots they're putting together. So,
Wow.
yeah, there was a video that came out today that I think was actually First Tech Challenge sponsored from Gluten Free. So Gluten Free, for those of you who don't know, was a championship team for the past many years. They would win the world championship in Detroit and other places, and always had very high scoring robots. Their team members have all graduated, so they're now first alums. So as far as I understand, they're not competing this year, but they've gone ahead and built a robot and used it to demonstrate how a remote game would look, and so it looked pretty good. So I know there's teams that are already putting out a fair bit of good information and good demos of their robots. So that's really kind of cool. Just a note, so everybody's aware, this is being recorded. So because I do expect to post it on YouTube or somewhere like that. And before I go through what I was planning to talk about tonight for tools and things and hardware systems, I was just going to open the floor to questions and see if anybody had questions about the game, about things coming up in North Texas, anything burning that you want to know about or that you want to put on the agenda either for later in the call or for a future one of these clinics. You can either unmute yourself or you can write in the chat window. Either one works fine.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi there.
Hi, I have a question. So what's your estimate of the game build up? How many man hours?
Oh, in order to build the field?
Yeah.
Are you asking about your first one or your third one? Because I can tell you the
My
time.
first one.
Um, it's not a hard build. I think it took me. I've been moving slow lately, but I think it took me about 4 hours to build, 4 or 5 hours to build. It's not a
Okay.
particularly difficult build. And once you've done one of the tower goals, doing the other is pretty quick because the steps aren't all that hard. The one challenging part of it is the making the return goals. And they even tell you in the instructions that that's the challenging part. So just a second here, and I will. I'm going to spotlight my video here, and let me move over to Chrome, and I'll just go to. Let me see my Chrome window. There we go. So one of the things that I did put out on the Google group was, and I've made available for others, is a build guide annotation. So if you're on the North Texas FTC Google group, you'd have gotten this already. This is the build guide that comes for First Tech Challenge. I'm hoping everybody can see it okay. Let me do that. And what I did was, after I built my first field, and that took a bit longer. I'd say that was, or once I built my first goal, as I went through the build guide instructions, it was really like there were several parts where I wouldn't say stumped, but it's like, gee, I really wish you guys had told me this. So I went back and added my own little notes to the official build document. So this is the official build document that comes from Andy Mark. that you can download from their site, or you can just get mine. The version mine is based off is revision number 1.2, and that's the latest one I did. And let me just I'll just kind of scroll through some of these and show you just a couple of tips on the building. So about half the pages are telling you what all the parts are. So that's a good sign, right? When they're just telling you what all the parts are, that means there's not that many steps to putting it together. Oops, I hit the wrong key. So, you know, the good first portion of it is just identifying all the parts and then how to remove the protective covers. It's mostly made, a lot of it is made out of corrugated plastic. So corrugated plastic is like cardboard, except instead of being made out of paper, it's plastic. It's a very strong material. It's very lightweight material. It's good for building stuff with this. And so a lot of what you're doing for different parts is origami, where you're folding different parts together and then zip tying them in order to create the different parts. So one of the parts is the corral, which is used to capture the rings when they come out of the chutes at the back of the towers. This is the piece that takes the longest, is this piece that creates the return rack. And so you go through and you fold it together. And the spot that takes forever is step number 8, where you have to take these little tabs that they appear straight in this view, but they're not. They're at an angle. And you need to take them and fit them into a pair of slots on the side there. That is the most challenging part of the build, is getting those tabs into those slots. And part of what made it challenging for me was that on the corrugated plastic that I got, the slots weren't actually cut all the way through. And I didn't realize that. And so I eventually said, okay, I'm going to just take a knife. And I could tell that I was cutting through a bit more of the plastic, and then it went through okay. So that's the most challenging part. And you can see the little blue notes that I added throughout the document. Is just little tips like, how do you go about doing it? And there's another page earlier, there's another page here later where, let's see, I'm just going to scroll through a bit. So when you're creating the tower goals, when you go to put the pipes onto the base that form the corners of the tower goals, there's actually 3 holes where screws can go, but they only showed 2 screws in the document. And I couldn't decide if you're supposed to only use 2 like the picture, or if you're supposed to use 3 when there were 3 holes. And it wasn't until much later that I actually saw the note that's up here that says each foot should be secured with 3 screws. But it would have been nice if they put all 3 of them in the picture and not left one out and left one hidden. And so I went ahead and put a little blue note there. And then I added a yellow note just to warn that if you're using a power tool, as I was, and you just like go at it with the power tool, you can completely drive the screw through the plate, which would ruin the plate. So you really want to be careful with that. So anyway, I highly recommend looking at my annotated build instructions. There's lots of little notes that say, hey, they said slide a front base riser sleeve, and there's about 3 different sizes of sleeves available, but they didn't tell you which one was which. So I added a note to say which one you need, things like that. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's not other than the one step of trying to get the tabs in the slots, it's not a challenging build. And the version of revision 1.2 of the instructions is much better than 1.1 of the instructions, which is what I was having to start with when I did my stuff. So that's what I would say, right? So a few hours and stuff, and you can do it in steps. If you're just trying to get it built enough to be able to like start doing target practice, you can do that by skipping a lot of steps. If you're going to have it where you want to use it in competition, you want to do all of the steps and get all the nets in the right place and things like that.
Okay, that was very helpful. One more question on that one. I remember for the wobble go, the cap and the stick, is it just like you push all the way in? There's nothing
Yes.
to hold it? It's tight enough?
Here's a wobble goal, and it's constructed as it comes in like 10 parts really, but there's a base and a disc, and you put these little plastic rivets in to hold the disc into the base, and that part's pretty easy. And then you have a PVC pipe. The PVC pipe goes into the wobble goal, and it's pretty snug. It's not so snug that it can't be taken out, but it's not going to come off on its own. Like if a robot's swinging this around, it's not gonna want to come off. And then I know Rev made a point when they were looking at some of the individual game elements of saying, you know, that the rubber cap, it's just a rubber cap. It's not actually attached other than by friction, but it is a fair bit tighter than the PVC pipe. So it does take a little bit of work to put on. It wouldn't hurt to use a little bit of glue or something to make that stay on a little bit better. Obviously, you don't want to do anything that changes the playability. So you don't want to like screw it in, because then you've added a screw that changes the shape of the piece. But you know, possibly like if your cap starts falling off a lot, possibly, you know, tape around the top. The other thing though is remember that whatever you do to your set locally may not be that way at a tournament you go to. So try to design your robot so you're not relying on the cap being there.
Yeah, that's my question. So if at the tournament the cap got loose.
It's probably worth asking in the Q&A forum if that's something you're actually concerned about, and get an official ruling from the thing. But my reading of it as somebody who's done a lot of these tournaments is that's just part of the field design, and you should design your robot around it. That if the cap came off in the middle of the match, I doubt we would call that a field fault.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Unless it just came off so easily. Like if it came off so easily that I couldn't do this with it, yeah, I might call that a field fault. But if you're relying on the cap being there as your mechanism for lifting, that may not be the safest robot design.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cool. Any other questions from anybody else in the group? Wow, we've got quite a few people joined in with all of that, so that's good. I'm glad to see everybody here.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Do you know when the SDK will come out?
No, I don't. I wish I did. I'm surprised. I'm a little surprised it's not out yet, but I did check earlier today to see if it was out, and it's not.
I checked just before I asked the question, so,
well,
so I wouldn't embarrass myself.
I, as far as I know, I haven't heard anything like any announcements about when it might be released. So that
Okay,
would be
just
good.
wondering.
I have somebody raise their hand in the thing, so if you want to unmute yourself, you can, and if you want to chat or if you want to put something in the chat window, that would be fine. And if you just accidentally raised your hand, then let me know that.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Are we gonna do anything with Fusion 360? Because my team can't get into Fusion 360.
I wasn't planning to do Fusion 360 tonight. But what we can do is if you send me an email, I'll be glad to try and walk through it. Or definitely consider using Onshape. Is another CAD package. I'm doing a clinic about that on Saturday morning to be able to do that. When you say you're not able to get into Fusion 360, why is it not working, or what part are you not able to get into, or give me another clue.
When we're trying to sign in, I haven't tried it yet, but everybody else is saying that it's not sending the confirmation email to us, and it's not letting us.
Okay. Then yeah, I would get in touch with Autodesk support and see about that. But their support's been really slow this week because they're changing their license model, like not just for first teams, but for everybody. And I sent a support request in a week ago, and I still haven't gotten a response. So I don't know what's going on there. One thing that I do know is that if you create a project folder in Fusion 360, then whoever creates the project folder has to be the person to send, or has to be the account that sends out the invitations. And my team is running into that this week because because we have a team account that has been our Fusion 360 account that like nobody ever logs into. We just create some base folders and then we administer it from there, but everybody uses their own account to get to it. And the invitations have to come from that account, but that account got locked a month ago because our license expired. And so I've put in a request to say, hey, can we renew our license for this season? I haven't gotten a response yet. So we'll see how that goes. Justine Thomas is in the chat and says that they've seen that happen with using a school email address. And so team members needed to use personal email addresses to be able to get Fusion 360 emails. So that might be it why. Definitely check junk folders, junk mail folders, and spam folders and see if maybe the messages are getting hidden somewhere. Okay, there's a note that from Alan Stevenson that new Skystone version, I presume of the SDK, was delivered this month that includes 2 cameras and switching between them. And that's cool, but I don't know what they added to be able to make that happen. We last year, my team already had 2 cameras on their robot and was switching between them. So we had one for the red side and one for the blue side. I don't think we switched between them so much as that we just knew which camera to look at. But that will be good to check out. But I do expect there to be an actual version that is called Ultimate Goal and not just the update to the Skystone version. And I've heard rumors that the new version of the SDK has quite a lot of new features in it, but I don't know what they are. And I'm very eager for those features. And I've been holding off on doing a lot of other programming things until the new SDK comes out, because I don't want to write a bunch of stuff about new features that I was thinking about adding in if they have already got those in there. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for the SDK. For those who don't know what an SDK is, it's for Software Developer Kit. It's the software that gets used if you're programming your robot, that every FTC team has to use to program their robot. Any other questions? All right, well, so what I wanted to do tonight, this is kind of for newer teams, but also I'm sure veteran teams will get something out of it. And I'm looking forward to getting feedback from others as well, especially from any veteran team coaches that are around. And that's to kind of walk through some of the different build environments, some of the different build platforms that are available for doing FTC, and some of the tools that are available for doing different things. And so I put out in the email and also on the Roboplex page. So I put out in the email and also on the Roboplex page a new hardware field guide, FTC tools guide. So if you're not familiar with Roboplex in North Texas, this is what I and a few other teams use to put information out about FIRST robotics programs in North Texas. And so you'll see that on the FTC page, there's a calendar of upcoming events. I expect to fill this out with more clinics as those come available. There's also links to the Google group if you want to get there. But there's also a hardware tools and tips page, and that is going to be fleshed out a fair bit if I get my way, if I get time to put it all together. But from there, right now, you can get to the hardware tools and tips page. And if you follow that link, it will take you to my hardware tools and tips document that I also put in the, oops, I just lost my, I clicked close too many times here. Hardware tools and tips document. And you're welcome to join in on this document if you want to go ahead and follow those links, because I'm just going to kind of walk through this and through the build systems and talk about the things that have been really useful for my team over these many years to know about, and especially finding those components that are either not obvious on somebody's on one of the product vendor sites, or that are kind of off the beaten path. And so so this document is here. It's a shared document right now. People with the view link are able to come in and make comments on it, and then I'll try and respond to the comments and add different items to it. But before I go through all of these tools, I also just wanted to talk about the build system universe. And so I'm going to go into, let's see, I'm going to go to my dashboard. So here I am in firstinspires.org, and I'll go to the dashboard. Hopefully it's not going to reveal anything that I really don't want people to see. Okay, this should be fine. So if you're a coach or an admin for a team, or if you're anybody involved in First, you have a dashboard. If you're a coach or a mentor on a team, then you have this section called My Teams, and it shows all of the different teams. And many of you will have been through this process already for doing the different tasks that need to be done. But what I'm going to do is go to the payment and product section and do order products. Because this is the section that you go to buy the components that you need for competing in the season. And so one of them, of course, is the season registration, but then the other parts are broken out into the control set, the electronic set, and the competition set. The control set and the electronic set are just about the same for everybody these days. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue through this. The control and communication set, that's the driver station phone and a pair of game pads that will be used to be able to drive your robot. And so everybody will have something like that. You are limited in terms of the phones that are allowed to be used in competition. So you can't just go grab whatever Android phone that you want and say, I'm going to use it as my driver station phone. They do limit the phones that are allowed in the competition. So just be aware of that. If you don't have one of these, then this is this is an easy place to go at. And I'm looking at it. This is the first time I've looked at it. They've included. It says it includes a webcam. Okay, that's good. I'm glad for that. But it only has one phone now. It used to have two phones. You no longer need a second phone because of the control hub, which we'll talk about next. But $180 is a little on the pricier side compared to what it used to be, but it's still not bad. And it is nice that it gives you a webcam. Then the next part, and as far as I'm concerned, every team should just buy one of these every year from the First storefront. So this is a control hub. When you get the control hub through the First storefront, it's significantly cheaper than buying it directly from Rev. First of all, the price is lower, 240 versus 270, which is the best price you can get on the Rev website, or maybe 265 or 255, but it is cheaper. But it also comes with a power switch and some sensors and some other components that are good to have as well. So if you don't already have a control hub, or you need another control hub for building a second robot, then I recommend buying it first through the First storefront. And then if once you've bought one through the First storefront, you can buy additional ones through the Rev Robotics storefront. But the part I really wanted to get to was the competition set. So there are basically 3 or 4 main vendors of competition set parts. One of them is Tetrix. It's the one that's been around longest. This is where my team got started. That we built all of our robots using Tetrix. And I'll go to the larger image here. It's a patterned, it's a structured build environment that has a lot of C channels, and a lot of gears and things have been sized to generally work together really well. And so there's a lot of history and a lot of experience in using the Tetrix set for building robots. My experience with Tetrix, I haven't tried any of their recent kits though, it was kind of frustrating because anytime I wanted to join two pieces together, they never fit. We never had exactly the pieces that we needed to get everything to fit together the way we wanted it to go. So we ended up buying a lot of extra parts off of the Tetrix website in order to bring them together and to try and get everything to work. It's a much better set now than it used to be. It has better quality motors, has some better pieces, a better assortment of pieces than what it used to have. But that's what the Tetrix set looks like. Then the other option you have is the Rev Robotics First Tech Challenge competition set, which has got a lot of pieces. They update their rookie set, their First storefront set every year based on feedback and improvements and new things that have come out over the prior year. So this is the set that I generally recommend that rookie teams start with, or new teams start with. And if you're looking to acquire just a lot of Rev parts, this set is a really good value for what you get. You can see in this, there's plenty of chain, there's sprockets, there's wheels of different types. There aren't mechanism wheels, but there are wheels of different types. Has a couple of the Ultra Hex motors that Rev is very fond of these days. There's some of their new channel pieces are available in the set. There's some extrusion. So just a lot of components that can really get you a long way towards building a robot that is at least able to be put on a field and score some points. So I do like the Rev set. The biggest difference between the Rev way of doing things and most of the other building sets is that Rev is extrusion based. And where did I put my extrusion? Well, let me just grab a robot here real quick so I can do it. Just a moment while I grab my robot. So the primary component for a long time in the Rev systems were these extrusions. And extrusions are just these long bars with slots in them. And by having the long bars with slots in them, that meant that you didn't have to worry about things lining up. You could adjust things pretty easily to move things around. And the way that the extrusions would work is if you're thinking of putting a screw, normally you would think I'd put it through a hole in a channel of some sort and then attach something through that hole. But with the extrusion, what happens is, let's see if I can pull this up and get a decent shot of this here. So what happens is that you put screws in the slots and then nuts on top of the screw. So the head of the screw is actually in the channel of the extrusion. And that way, by loosening up the nuts, so I'm going to loosen this pair of nuts here just a bit. Actually, I should do it on the other, I should do the other end. It'll be easier. So let me zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole structure here. So here I have a motor, it's got a chain, it's attached to this wheel. And if I need to change the tension on things, then I can just loosen this pair of nuts. So there I'm loosening one nut, loosening another nut, right? And then there's a pair on the other side here that I'll just loosen from the back real quick that you can't see in this camera shot. Right? And so once I've got those loosened, now this piece can slide back and forth along the channel. And so I can slide it out to make sure that it's got a good tension on the chain and I don't have to worry about holes lining up or about the chain having a specific length. It's really easy to get things to work together. So that's the Rev extrusion approach for putting together the robots. It's easy to do. What it does mean is you end up cutting a lot of your own parts. You end up you can buy the extrusion in 1 meter lengths, and then you can just cut it to size for whatever size robot you want. And if you're looking to line things up exactly, it's not always the easiest to do that. So those are the two primary build systems because they're available through the storefront. The next one that I did want to mention fairly quickly is the Actobotic Servo City set. So Servo City is a company that they obviously sell servos based on their name, but they also have a whole robotics section, and they just redid their website about a month or two ago. And so they're also a channel-based system. And they have a competition kit that they sell online, and I'll just expand it. And you can see that they also have channel that they use for their system, and they have plates, and you can get motors, and they provide wheels and things like that. It's a pretty good environment. When Servo City started becoming popular in about 2015, 2016, my team switched over to doing a lot of Servo City parts. We found that it was kind of easier to work with the Servo City build system over the Tetrix build system because there was a wider availability of parts to use. For that, one of the big important things to note about the Servo City system is that it's based on imperial units as opposed to metric units. So both Rev and Tetrix are based on metric units, millimeters, generally multiples of 8 or 16 millimeters, whereas the Actobotic system is generally based on multiples of 3/4 of an inch. So if you're trying to mate or trying to attach things that are English units, which is a lot of what we have in the United States, then the Servo City system can work well for that. So that's another one. And then GoBuilda is the last one I'm going to talk about. It's the same company, but they created a whole new line of products for doing robotics. And so if I go to their kits, or actually it was right there on the front. So they have an FTC kit. And let's see if I can get a picture of their components that are in their kit. They just kind of do them individually. It's a more expensive kit and so forth, but they also do a channel system with C channels and things like that. It is metric. So GoBuilda is kind of the metric version of Servo City. The thing that my team noticed very quickly when we first encountered the GoBuilda build system back in 2017 or so was these pieces are huge. So the Tetrix channels are 32 millimeters on a side. The Servo City channels are 1.5 inches on the side, and that's about 37 millimeters. So the Servo City channels are slightly larger than the Tetrix channels are. The GoBuilda channels are 48 millimeters on a side, so almost 2 inches wide. And if you're building a FTC robot where you've got to fit everything inside of 18 inches, it can constrain your space really, really quickly. So our feeling on our team was that the GoBuilda parts were just too big for us to be able to use to fit things in our robot. That's not to say it can't be done. It's been very successful, and the GoBuilda system has had a lot of thought into making sure that their parts are compatible with each other and with other components. But again, our initial impression was that these parts are really, really big relative to what you can get. And that's another reason why we like the Rev Robotics environment. With the Rev Robotics environment, if you're looking at a piece of extrusion, this is actually a channel though, it's only 15 millimeters square for a piece of extrusion. And when you're working inside of 18 inches, for us, millimeters count. We in last year's robot, we were literally scraping down into halves of millimeters and stuff to try and get more space. And so if we'd been using larger build elements, it would have been much harder for us to work with. Now the Rev Robotics channels on their large size, so this is 15 millimeters top to bottom. On their large size, they're 45 millimeters, so they're almost as big as a GoBuilda channel. And the companies have been making the channels that big so that you have the possibility of putting a motor inside a channel. You can see this one, it doesn't quite fit inside of a Rev channel, but the GoBuilda system is designed that you could potentially start to put motors and servos inside the channels instead of having to mount them on the outside. So that's a kind of an important piece or thing to keep in mind. So those are the major build systems. And I'm going to go back and look through the comments here and catch up. Wayne Dennis suggests that AndyMark has some good extrusion options. So let's go look at those just real quick so I can take a look. I'll just go to the AndyMark website altogether. So AndyMark is the place to go to get the game sets, of course, but also they have quite a bit of different pieces. So let's go under first, and I'll go into first tech challenge. And I don't know if they do their extrusion in their first tech challenge kits, but they do have extrusion that I know that they use in their FRC kits. And let's see here. So extrusion, nope, not brackets. Go back. Electrical, mechanical, extrusion. So if you go and look on the different types of things that they have available, they have quite a bit of different types of extrusion as well. They often are more focused on FRC robots, so their extrusions tend to be a bit bigger. So they have their peanut extrusions. Those are an inch square. They're reasonably nice to build with, and you can get them in different colors, so you can do some nice things with your robots if you want to do that. But a lot of their channels and stuff are an inch square. That's actually smaller than Tetrix and stuff, but you do end up needing to drill a lot of your own holes to do those, or have things that can fit into the slots to be able to make them work together. So that's very popular among RC teams. FTC teams can be super successful with it as well, but there it becomes you're designing a lot more of your own parts and putting things together, I think, than with one of the other more structured build systems that are there. Justine points out, and correctly, Servo City has a 25% discount for all teams. So does GoBuilda. So if you sign up with them, they will very quickly turn around and put you in their discount program. And so the parts that you buy there are 25% off retail. If they're having a sale on something, then you generally get the lower of the sale price or the 25% discount, but not both combined. If you're buying from Rev, there's also, they have a discount code where you can get 15% off select things that you buy. And they tend to be some of the expensive things like control hubs and things like that. So that's really worthwhile. So I'm going to pause there for a second, allow more comments to come in, some quick questions, any questions about the overall build systems, things that people have always been curious about and things like that. And then I'll go into some more of the terms or some of the other components that aren't in the build system categories. Again, you can raise your hand, or you can put something in the chat window. Either one of those are fine. And if you don't have anything, that's fine. I have plenty of material for tonight. Some people will ask, what does my team use on our robots? And, because 7172 has been building robots for a long time. So we have a lot of experience and we have a lot of parts. We've accumulated quite a bit over these many years. So I have boxes and boxes full of parts that are sitting on the shelf that we may never use. Our last in the Rover Ruckus season, we found that combining first of all, using the Rev extrusions for our chassis, for our drivetrain, has been the best thing. So since for the last 4 or 5 seasons now, we've always been able to, we've always used the Rev extrusion to build our drivetrain. And that's just because it's so small, 15 millimeters, you can get wheels in and around it and you can build it. And it's sturdy enough and go from there. Once we get to the upper parts of the robot, we've done a variety of things where we'll mix Rev extrusion. And for the last couple of years, we've typically been using Actobotics parts. They're obviously not perfectly compatible because Actobotics is an Imperial system and Rev is the metric system. But since mostly what we've been doing is attaching Actobotics to extrusion, and extrusion has slats, those kind of compatibility issues haven't been an issue for us. So that's been what we've used a lot of in the past couple of years. If we look at the design from last year's robot, and I think I have a graphic that I can get to fairly quickly. Let me see if I can pull it up here real quick. And you're not seeing what I'm doing in the background because I'm going to secret places that you shouldn't know about. Let's see here till I get this online. So let's go to there, and it's not there. Let's try this. Oh, I know where it is. Oops, I hit the wrong button there. It's not that one. It's going to take me a second to get there and find it. It's not that one. Sorry, folks. Bear with me a second while I pull this up. Here we go. Let's try this one. Okay, so it's downloading right now. 7172, of course, applied for the Rev Robotics grant, and one of the things that Rev Robotics said was to include a CAD of your model. So we gave them a link to the online CAD of our model. So this was 7172's robot this last year. And what you can see is that for the drivetrain, it's all rev extrusion along the bottom. And so everything is just connected with little 15mm rev extrusion. And that way we could get our wheels mounted and stuff and not use a lot of space on the robot. Our intake ended up being done almost entirely with Actobotics components for the mounting of the intake. So these are Actobotics channel that are here. There's a 1/2 inch bar that goes across the distance of the robot to help hold the front together. It is then on a pair of bearings around an 8mm shaft that allowed the intake to pop up and out. And so that was what got used for the intake last year. So primarily Rev and Actobotics. In the Rover Ruckus season, we did use GoBuilda for their climbing mechanism. That was really good. But this has been the standard that we've typically used for ours. Couple of another question that just came through on the chat: is the Rev website the only place to buy the expansion hub? As far as I know, yes. First is not doing it through their storefront because they're trying to get everybody to move to control hubs. So what's available through the storefront are the minimum things that teams might need in order to get started. And so they're now just offering control hubs through the storefront. So if you need an expansion hub, then yes, get it through the Rev website. But I do think it's available with the 15% discount. Okay. So with that, let me go back to my guide here, and let me just talk through the guide and some of the tools, and I've got some of them with me to be able to show them. First of all, organization-wise, how this is organized is it's organized into multiple sections. Again, people are able to add comments and things like that. So the first one is common tools. These are things that I think are common for every team that you're likely to need no matter what build system you happen to be using. Then there's tools and parts that are specific for the Rev build system, things that you might want to get for those. Tools and parts that are more relevant if you're in either the Tetrix or Actobotics system, and where to get some of those, and then some general consumables. I don't have anything up here for the GoBuilda system because, again, my team hasn't done a lot with it to be able to know it, how it works. Also in this build guide, for each item that is being listed here, what we've done is identify what it is, a couple of links where you can go find it, the typical price of that item, and these prices were updated just a couple of days ago. Just as a general comment about the state of the world, since as I was updating this list comparing prices from a year ago, all the prices went up, and in some cases substantially up. So just there's a general inflation on technology, and I don't know if that has to do with tariffs or whatever else, or manufacturing costs, or things like that. But it was interesting to note that all the prices just seem to go up, some cases substantially, in other cases not. So item, a vendor, expected price, and for many of the items, there are end notes. And so the end notes are here at the end, and I'll kind of go through all the end notes where we kind of explain why you want this part, or what you need to know about that part, or some of the considerations for using it. And then, as I said, links. Some of the prices here are quoted as retail. Some of them are quoted as what you can get with discounts. And so if you see a price here, like $270, and then you go to the Rev Robotics website and say, I'm interested in the control hub, you'll see there on their website, they have it listed for $300. The difference is that the $270 is what you can get it with the discount. So you should try to find a discount available somewhere, or ask somewhere about getting the discount. And I think the note also has the link to the discounts. So let me just go through some of these supplies, and if there are questions, feel free to just break in and ask me, or put it on the chat. I see Alan Stevenson ask a question about the 7172 robot. I'll come back to that after I go through some of the tools. So I'm just going to put a pin in that one, but I promise to get back to it. So first of all is the Rev Control Hub. And the one thing I'll say about the Rev Control Hub is just, if you were if you're competing and unless you have a really strong reason for wanting to stick with a smartphone and an expansion hub as your robot controller, I recommend all teams go to the control hub. I have a theory. I don't have any proof of it. I have a theory that certain smartphones might be faster than the control hub in terms of their processor power. But again, I don't have any benchmarks on that. So if you absolutely are needing like faster processing speed, then maybe um, it might be worth considering the phone approach. But that adds so many other complications that I think it's worth just trying to make the control hub work. There's a suggestion there about whether or not it's helpful to add a discount as a column. I'm already like 8.5 inches wide with this table, and I'm trying to avoid adding columns, but maybe I'll put an asterisk or something on the price to say there's a discount, or an asterisk on links, or some sort of marker that indicates that it's available with discounts. So we'll do that. The next thing that you tend to need is a OTG adapter. You get one of these when you buy the electronic set. I'm sorry, the controller communication set. And what an OTG adapter is, it's just a cable, right? It's just a cable. It looks like this over here on the side. And that connects between the smartphone that is your driver station and then provides a USB port where you can plug in game pads for your robot controllers, or a hub if you need to put in more than one robot controller. This is the weak link of the whole system. It's just the that is the part that fails, and it fails for a variety of reasons, most of which have to do with the micro USB connector that is on the cable and on the phones. Those connectors were not designed to be used in rough robot environments where robots traveling around and running into things. And so it's very susceptible to vibration. It's very susceptible to bad connections. And sometimes what happens is as you plug and unplug the cable many times, pieces can deform. And it's not always on the cable side. Sometimes it's on the phone side that things go bad. And there's a lot of very low quality cables. So if you, I always recommend that teams have some spare cables available. At about half of the tournaments we go to, we always encounter a team that is having a lot of phone issues, phone connection issues. And it comes down to, we can tell there's something wrong with the OTG connection. And so I try to have extra cables on hand for them, but we don't always manage to do that. So it's good to have a few spares on hand. Last year, several teams that I know of, including my team, experimented with just using the Rev Ultra USB hub. So the Rev Ultra USB hub wasn't designed to go on the driver station. It was designed to go on the robot controller to make it easier to attach cameras, webcams. But it can be used on the driver station side, because what happens is when it is put together, you get to decide what kind of cable goes into the upstream port, and they include an OTG cable there. So if you put an OTG cable in the upstream port, then you get a combination of OTG cable and hub to be able to attach two game pads. And for us, that seemed to be pretty reliable. So we went with using the Ultra USB hub for connecting our game pads to the driver station last year. And we didn't have any trouble with it. We heard reports of people having trouble with it. We had a couple of times where it seemed like it was doing some weird things, but we never had trouble with it in competition. So that's another approach for that. But that's the reason why the OTG. Hey everybody, it's Patrick. We paused for a second to note that at this point in the call, my internet connection died. And so I lost the recording for whatever portion of the meeting happened afterwards. I was able to get back in and start recording again about 5 minutes later. So there is a portion of this meeting that's missing, but we'll just pick up with where I have recording available so that will explain a little bit of the jump. Thanks. I got saved. So
They did get to see my chicken.
Oh my God, the lunatic chicken.
I had the little chicken and his big brother.
So
I was on a Zoom call one day, and I happened to have a bunch of Legos laying around, and it was an incredibly boring Zoom call. So
you built a larger version of the lunatic chicken.
yes.
So pop quiz. Who remembers what season that's from? What season had the lunatic chicken?
Oh, I don't even remember, but
Okay, I only remember because it was my rookie season.
oh, so what? 2010,
11.
11. Dang it, I still don't remember.
So there was a lot of bacteria, and
Oh,
there was
okay,
it was
that one,
Food Factor.
Big Factor.
Food Factor FLL season. So yeah. So they the game rules, or one of the updates, even talked about the lunatic chicken because it was a piece that was in the set that actually wasn't a scoring element.
But everybody wanted to do something with it.
Right, but everybody wanted to do something with the lunatic chicken. And then it even made a cameo appearance in the following season of Senior Solutions.
Actually, occasionally I'll see in a FLL video, I'll see a lunatic chicken somewhere in the video.
Like a little Easter egg, huh?
Especially with Scott Evans.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. Well, there's about 8 or 10 of us here, or 9 of us here. So I can, let's see, what time is it now? It's 10 after. I'll go ahead and run through quickly some of the parts where I left off for those who are there. And then I'll probably schedule another one or do a recording or something like that of the system. So let me get back to where I was and see if I can pull this up. It was, there it is. Yeah, so coming back here, get back to where I was and try and remember where I was. Okay, and let me share that so people can see it. Yay, okay, we're back. All right, so I had left off on the OTG capture. The other things that are here, they're pretty, many of them are very obvious, but they're not always obvious to know where to get them. So I just include links like where do you go to get safety glasses? And Amazon, the store of stores, has been my go-to place to get safety glasses for a lot of different places. One of the nice things about safety glasses, at least where I live here in Plano, Texas, is that when I remember at about noon the day before a competition that I need to get more safety glasses, I can get same day delivery from Amazon and still get it there for the tournament next day. So that's one of the nice reasons for doing it with Amazon. Also, per unit, they tend to be cheaper. So, make sure to have safety glasses and things like that.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes.
Quick question. For those of us with regular glasses, can you get the side shields through Amazon? Or
You can.
See, I never found those. Okay.
Just a minute. Let me
And
see.
for all those on the call who don't know what I'm talking about, I typically wear glasses, but
See if I have them here.
they have side shields
Here we
that go on your glasses to yes, and those serve as safety glasses.
Right. So
you don't have to have a big clunky thing over your regular glasses.
I should just stick this into that document.
Oh, thank you.
Right, which is part of the reason for
I'll probably be going there later. Because I know everybody always asks me where I got them.
Right. Well, I was, when I was at the university, I couldn't buy through Amazon very easily, but I could order them in bulk from like Granger or somewhere like that. But they're definitely way more expensive that route. But yeah, this is nice. So these are little plastic clips that go on the side of your glasses. And so if you have team members who wear regular glasses and you believe that the lenses would be safe enough, and a lot of people have polycarbonate lenses these days, so that they can serve as eye protection, then you get these shields, and they work out well for that. And you can see this is 12 pairs for $12, so it's $1 a pair, which is a great price.
$2 a pair.
That's a great price. So
holy moly.
I will post that link in there for now and then update it later. I'll just
thank you.
Jump it in there. So thanks for remembering that. I'd forgotten about that.
I always have issues, so.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so drill press, hand drill. you know, so having something to drill holes is always useful. One of the unique things that I remember on my team is one of my newer team members once, who wasn't really the building type. You know, we tried to get her to go drill some holes, and she wanted to use the hand drill. And we said, no, you should use the drill press for that. She's like, oh no, that's more dangerous. It's, you know, it's a big machine. I'd rather use the small hand drill. And we all were like, no, the drill press is way safer. So let's go show you how to use the drill press, just and so on. You don't need a super expensive fancy drill press. We got ours from Home Depot. But they're really handy to have on hand if you have a place to put it. If not, then you definitely want to have a hand drill of some sort. And then somebody noted you can get prescription safety glasses which outside sealed. You can do that. That's also another approach if you don't mind getting the extra set of glasses. Chain breaker tool. So chain breaker tools are used to break chain, and 7172 used to not do a lot of chain, and now we do chain for a lot of things. And so the tool that all the FRC teams and the longtime FRC and FTC teams talk about is this one called the Dark Soul Chain Breaker tool. It's $32, but everybody swears by it. And it's for breaking chain. The chain that typically gets used in the FTC world is number 25 chain. That's an ANSI standard. Notably, Go Build a Chain is not number 25 chain, so just be aware of that if you're doing Go Build a. There's a lot of different chain breakers around, and everybody says just buy this one and save yourself, you know, $32 worth of hassle later on easily, because it seems to be one of the stronger ones. Rev has come out with their version of the chain breaker tool, which looks like that, and it works fine, but it's made from, I believe it's made from aluminum. And I think that we had one that we were actually able to strip the aluminum on here, which didn't do very much for us. And so the Dark Soul has we've never had trouble with that one. The Rev chain tools that we've tried, you know, every so often we'd have a failure. It didn't quite work. So I still continue to recommend the Dave's Motor, the Dark Soul one from Dave's Motor. Justine had added a comment. I don't know if it's Justin or Justine. Anyway, had put in a comment that that Servo City has one as well. I haven't tried it. I didn't know it existed, so I may get one just to see if I can find out from other people. And Justin says that they'll update us when they try it, so that's good. The rest of these are just things to keep in mind, right? So hacksaw, bench vise, wire cutter, stripper, needle nose pliers. Deburring tool is really, really handy to have, especially for as cheap as it is. And just a second, I lost my display again here for a second. Let me go to the overhead camera. So a deburring tool it's just a really simple tool, and it's made for deburring pipes like you would cut, either PVC pipes or other ones. And if you have something that you've freshly cut, then all you do is run it along the side, and it just takes away the little sharp edges and the other little pieces. And that's what, you know, deburrs things. We like to call our tool Hamilton because it tends to deburr things. But it's a simple little tool, but because we do so much milling and things like that with polycarbonate and cutting plastics, it's really handy to take the sharp edges off of those. So that's a really simple one to do. A bench vise, if you're going to be cutting with a hacksaw, then it's good to have a bench vise to be able to hold things while you're cutting. Always keep safety in mind, and cutting is far easier when you have something that's able to do that. All of these tool lists are kind of been listed in order of priority, like where would I put them in terms of a priority list. And I'm likely to adjust some of these, but one of the things that my team always finds useful is a set of digital calipers. And so a set of digital calipers look like this. And they're a measuring tool for measuring distances. So it's like a ruler, but it's really easy to measure the thickness of things. So if I need to know Like if I want to know how wide this channel is, then I can just put the calipers on it and squeeze it, and it tells me that it's about 38.44 millimeters. And I can switch that to be inches, and it tells me it's 1.5 something inches. So that way, it's a really easy way to get measurements of things, especially very small things. Like if I need to know how thick this aluminum is here, then I can find out it's 2.30 millimeters. So it's very good for doing small things. It's also very good for measuring the insides of things. If I need to know how wide this hole is, then I can put the calipers on the inside and stretch it out to the diameter of the hole. And it tells me that that hole is 12.7 millimeters in diameter, which is half an inch, which is what it should be. So it's a really useful tool for measuring things. One thing I will note is that once your team members find out that this tool exists, they will tend to use only it to measure things, even if it's not the ideal tool for measuring something. So remind them that a straight edge ruler works just fine too, from time to time, that you don't have to use the fancy electronic tool to do it. But that's definitely worth looking at. I would go with the Amazon tool over the Home Depot one. I listed the Home Depot link there only primarily because some people, like when I was at university, it's hard for them to buy from Amazon if they have to go through a school district or something like that. And Home Depot is often nearby and easily able to do that. The next part is the hex key set. I had looked for a long time for a hex key set and found this one on Amazon, which is really nice. It's a folding key set. It has both metric and standard imperial on it. And so that makes it much easier to just be able to get to the whatever hex key you want. So whether you're in a Tetrix environment or in a Rev or Activotics environment or an environment that uses metric, this one tends to have everything that you would really need. Go ahead,
Hey,
Joe.
Patrick.
Yeah.
We're looking at your physical desktop, not your
I'm
computer
sorry.
desktop.
I forgot. Thank you.
It's very interesting, however.
There. Sorry about that. Thanks. So
Thank you.
anyway, this is the hex key tool that I tend to use. Actually, I'll spotlight my video again. Oh, I can't spotlight my video. We don't have enough people in, but y'all can focus on me. Anyway, this one I found, it's not very expensive. It's like $7.38. You're not going to lose the hex keys unless you take it apart. So it works really well. It comes in FTC orange, so it's it's just about perfect. So that's another one that I find really useful. The next one is a USB Wi-Fi dongle, and I just ordered one of these because the previous dongles that I had up there in previous years were for 2.4 gigahertz. But if you're going to the control hub, you want to be on the 5 gigahertz bands at a competition. There is a lot less congestion. You're going to get a lot less interference. And so I literally just bought this today. I haven't even opened the box yet. What it is, this is my old one that I used to use. What it is, it's just a little USB dongle. And I'll switch over so we can get a little close. It's just a little thing that plugs in the side of in a USB port on your laptop or on your computer. And it gives you another wireless port. And most people don't necessarily realize it, but you can have multiple wireless cards on your computer, and each one can connect to a different network. And why that's important is that you can, if your computer is connected to the internet, you can also connect to the robot at the same time and not have to disconnect from the internet to do it. And that's really, really handy. So I always recommend, get one of these little dongles, and that way, if you're in a school environment or you're in a lab environment and you want to be able to access the internet because you're downloading things and looking things up but stay connected to your robot, you really need an extra wireless port to do that. And these are really cheap. This one was $12. So that's something I would highly recommend. The Dremel rotary tool is always good to have, especially if you need to cut things off. When we are working with the Rev Robotics motors, they come with these really long shafts, and often they're too long. And so we'll want to cut those off. And you can do it with a saw, with a hacksaw or something like that. I always worry about doing it with a hacksaw because now you're putting stress on the bearings inside the motor when you do that. And so the rotary tool puts a lot less stress on it when you're cutting the shaft. And so that's why it's useful for that. There's all sorts of different ones that are available for doing that. So I'm down to the rotary tool. This is, and again, the things that get to the bottom here become much less important. But precision screwdriver set, I found this over the summer when I was doing a bunch of 3D printing things, and I love it. I've bought 3 of them already for different groups to use. So the precision screwdriver set is just this little set here, and it has all these little screwdriver bits. And most importantly, it has the bits that you would really want to have for doing robotics. So the bits I'm always using are this one. That's a 5.5 millimeter nut driver. So it will work on the Rev Robotics nuts to tighten things in. It has all of the different hex sizes. And I know y'all can't see this very well because I'm zoomed out, but all the different hex sizes for the metric socket screws that you might encounter, and it has the imperial ones for the imperial ones you might encounter. And what I've taken to doing, I haven't done it on this set yet, is I color code these with different colors like red, green, and blue, so I can quickly locate them and say, oh, I need the red one, I need the green one. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit about color coding things. Then you get to the world of storage bins. For a long time, I would use these storage bins, which, let me switch back to my Chrome window. So I would use these storage bins for being able to store small parts. These are really thin, so they're great for small parts. This is how we would store our Legos for many, many years, and they were perfectly sized for storing and sorting Legos. The little yellow components, compartments come out. They're actually little tubs that come out, so you can set them aside. So we use that for a very long time. Recently, though, we've gone to just using fishing tackle boxes because they're easier to transport than these guys are. But coming up and finding a storage system is useful. I may just do a quick YouTube video about the storage system we've come up with. And then because we do a lot of plastics on our robot, I included just links to where we get polycarbonate sheets for doing polycarbonate and Delrin or acetal sheets for doing other types of plastics. So let me just go scroll down and look at some of the notes for these guys while we're here. Just so you can see what the notes say about them, and I can make sure I didn't forget anything. You know, here's talking about the Dark Soul tool. Here's why the Wi-Fi adapters are done. For the nut drivers, for the hex keys and stuff, we color code our tools. And so you can see that here's a couple of the nut drivers that we purchased, and we use red to indicate a 764 socket. And so that's for 632 socket cap screws. And then green was for our hub set screws, and blue was for our button cap screws. So we would identify each of our tools with a color so that when we pick one of these up, you're not trying to read the little tiny print on the handle, but you could quickly identify what the tool was that whether you had the right size tool for whatever it was that you wanted to put together. And so I do the same thing for the individual bits in the precision screwdriver set that I talked about. I'll just take a Sharpie, colored Sharpie or colored permanent marker, and color the bit itself. And that makes it really easy to find in doing the different things. All right, let me go up to the top. And am I still? Yes, I'm still recording. Just checking to make sure that everything's the way it's supposed to be. All right, so that's just generic tools. And thank you again, Joe, for reminding me about the side shields. That was a really useful addition. And then plastic sheet cutter. So these are the different parts here. And again, the notes, like for polycarbonate sheets, they explain what does it mean to be polycarbonate, why it's not the same thing as plexiglass, and why we use Delrin or acetal, and what its advantages are. I've started to put in here robot parts that aren't necessarily obvious from the different vendors. So mechanism wheels, the the wheels that a lot of the top teams use, gluten-free uses, we've used for 3 years now. If you're going to go with Mecanum wheels, then the ones that are available from Robot Shop are always a good choice. They're well known in competition among top teams, and they're called Nexus, and they're 100mm Mecanum wheels. GoBuilda last year came out with a new set of wheels that are, I think, basically the same as the Nexus wheels, but their mounting hub style is different. And the advantage that GoBuilda talks about for their wheels is that they are lighter than the Nexus wheels by about 1/4 pound per wheel. And so that has two effects. One, it makes your robot lighter, which is good for speed. But two, since the wheels themselves are lighter, supposedly that improves your acceleration a fair bit. So my team is looking to switch to the GoBuilda wheels this year for their drivetrain. The price is listed there. That's the retail price. If you get the 25% discount, it's substantially cheaper. It's like $104, and I'll put the discounted price in there and a mark there as well. The Rev Robotics Mecanum wheels I talked about in a previous chat clinic. These are smaller. They're 75mm wheels. And again, some teams may have difficulty ordering things from GoBuilda or Robot Shop. So if you really want to go Mecanum, then you can look at Rev, because Rev is probably going to be one of your approved vendors to be able to get those. And because they're smaller, they're cheaper. Smaller wheels can mean slower robots and lower to the ground. There's all sorts of trade-offs to be considered there. In the Rover Ruckus game, we pioneered the use of something that's called flexible rack gear for being able to do our extensions. It was really, really effective, and everybody wanted to know where we got them. We got them from a company called KHK Gears, which is actually out of Japan, and their US distributor website is here. So because everybody was asking us where to get those, I included those there. The robot parts section, I expect, will go out. Somebody mentioned in the chat that you can change the color of the wheels with the GoBuilda wheels. That could be really useful for us. I'm curious, is that changing like the color of the hubs or changing the color of the rollers? So if you get a chance, the rollers, wow, okay. We will definitely, is that on their site? Just a minute, I gotta go look. Did I overlook something when I ordered there earlier? So GoBuilda, motion, wheels and tires, Mecanum wheels. Oh, you can get white rollers. And you can get the standard yellow rollers. But my team would want blue, but we might. Oh, you dyed them orange. I may get some white rollers and see if we can dye them blue. The only thing I'd be concerned about is if that affects their traction at all. If you dye them or do anything like that. All right, tools and components, parts for Rev components. These go pretty quickly here. If you're working with Rev components, then you will probably want to get nut drivers and various hex drivers. And so one of the websites that you should become familiar with quickly is McMaster-Carr. They're a great site for tools and various parts that are there. And I'll go to the McMaster-Carr website here in a second, but I'm just gonna follow this link to the McMaster site to say, to get these nut drivers that are here. And I have one, or ones that are like these. There are several nut drivers, and I'll show how to get to them here in a second. But the McMaster nut drivers that you can get from McMaster are slightly better than the Rev ones. The Rev ones work fine, but in our experience, the end that holds the nut is a little too big. And so sometimes if we get a nut that's really tight, or if we're not pressing down absolutely 100% on the nut, with the Rev nut driver, you'll turn it, but it won't actually twist the nut, which of course is the point of the tool. The tolerances on these are a bit better, so it's worth getting a couple of these at least, if not just standardizing on them for your nut drivers from McMaster-Carr. If you go to the McMaster-Carr site, let me switch back. If you go to the McMaster-Carr site in general, you'll see they have all sorts of screws and threaded rods and nuts and washers and just all types of components. So this is another place to go to buy screws of different sorts that you might need for the different build systems. And so in the tools guide, I've tried to list the different types of screws you would consider for each of the build systems. Because when I was a first-time coach and started with the Tetrix system, I was like, oh wow, you know, I can go buy screws from Tetrix, but I need them in different lengths, or I want to buy them at cheaper than whatever they're selling them for. And I didn't know all the specifications of what to get. So this this chart is trying to give some of those hints. So if you're in the Rev build environment, you need M3 screws, and typically you want to get zinc plated steel. We've gotten stainless steel screws in the past, and we've had them snap. Whether that was we got a defective batch or something like that, the zinc plated steel have been the strongest ones for us to use. And you can get them from McMaster Carr. That was useful for us for a long time because they had the lengths that we couldn't get from Rev. Rev this last year added a lot more lengths of M3 screws to their inventory and their online shop. So we'll probably buy them from Rev rather than McMaster Carr in the future. Same thing for lock nuts, same thing for a lot of different components that are available. The other thing that I would highly consider getting in the Rev world, besides getting custom nut drivers and hex drivers, are a metric step drill from Rev. That's just a little, it's just a little drill that you can use to drill things to precise depths. And it starts by starting with a small hole and consecutively making it bigger as you drill through, and you can stop at different steps. So this one goes from about 3 millimeters up to 12 millimeters. And so if you're working in the Rev environment, you need to drill holes for 9 millimeters for some of their bushings or bearings, or 12 millimeters for some of their other bushings or bearings. This is a really handy way to get those precise holes that you need. So we use this a few times a year, and for $5, it's worth having on hand. Another thing that I definitely want to point out for the Rev environment are the patch set screws. For collars and things like that, the set screws are what hold the collar to the shaft, whatever it may happen to be, or hold the hub onto the axle. But the set screws will often come loose, and then the collars just slip off. So there are these special types of set screws that are available. Here's the ones that are available from Rev. So it's a set screw just like any other, but it has this little patch of nylon attached to it. And so the nylon makes it act like a locking screw, just like a nylon lock nut does for the inside of a nut. And so when you put these screws in, they'll thread in, but the nylon tends to want to hold the screw in place so it won't rotate or vibrate out of the socket. And so if you're using collars or hubs or things where you have set screws, I highly recommend getting the patch set screws so that they won't do that. And Rev has them in the 10 millimeter variety, which is a little bit long. McMaster Carr has them available in 4 millimeter lengths and 3 millimeter lengths, which is a lot slower. You can't really see it very well from this picture, but there is a little nylon patch that's there. By the way, McMaster Carr also has nylon patch screws for just normal socket cap screws as well. So if you're screwing into a hub with a normal screw and not just a set screw, these things called nylon patch screws do exist. And instead of putting the nylon on the nut side, it puts it on the screw side so that it can stay in a blind hole without coming out too badly. So if you're in the Rev world, those are the tools that I kind of recommend. If you have a lot of money and you're doing a lot of stuff in the Rev environment where you're cutting a lot of parts, because Rev likes to sell their extrusions and their channel in 1 meter lengths that you cut to size, then at some point it's worth considering going ahead and buying a micro chop saw. I bought one of these for our team a couple of years ago. I was on the fence about it for I was on the fence for it for a long time, almost a year, before I finally broke down and got it. And within a week of having got it, it was like, why did I wait the year to get it? So it is an expensive tool. It's $250, but it's really handy for cutting extrusion and pipes and axles and tools and things like that. So I have one here in front of me, so I'm just going to switch cameras here so that you can see it. It's hard to get a sense of the scale of this thing, but it's really tiny. From here to here is only about 8 inches. Like I'll put one of the Rev or one of my nut drivers by it. You can see it's not very big. And it's got a pair of jaws here that can hold whatever it is that you're wanting to cut. And so we just take our extrusion there, and then when you activate it, it has a little lock on it, and you can just go down, and the saw part will just cut through, just like a chop saw would. But this is really small. The blade here is only about 80 millimeters wide, so about 3 1/8 inches wide. So it's a nice little portable tool. It's really designed for being able to cut small parts, like rev extrusions and things like that. If you're going to cut axles or things with it, I wouldn't use the blade that comes with the tool. I would buy the grinding wheel, the cutoff wheel blades, and that link is here too. They're not very expensive. So I would buy these cutoff wheel that they're able to cut through axles and things just fine. And again, this is one of the things that for my team, you know, they can make things kind of work with a hacksaw, but it's just really nice if they need to cut some extrusion or cut a lot of pieces to the same length to get them on the chop saw, and they can just literally, you know, like do this. It's nice and safe. It has you know, the barriers and things like that in it. There was a note that was put in there relative to the micro chop saws, that there are similar versions of these available from Harbor Freight and other places, and I did buy those early on, and they are cheap and in my opinion not very safe. They're very cheap plastic. They're the belts tend to wear out on really quickly, so just save your money, don't buy them. It's not even worth the money from the Harbor Freight version of the tool. However, it was noted in some of the comments that Adam from Mythbusters has used them in the past, and so if they're good enough for him, then maybe they can be good enough for others. But my experience was that, you know, it was within 1 or 2 uses, I knew it was a waste of money. So it's worth spending the money on this other one. I'm gonna stop there with the rev tools real quick. Ask questions. So questions, can you buy replacement blades for the chop saws it dulls? Yes, Amazon sells the replacement blades. I haven't seen or run into problems getting replacement blades. There's not a lot of vendors for it. And the chuck that is used to hold it looks like a pretty standard chuck. So there are cutoff wheels and cutoff blades for other tools. I wouldn't go larger than 3 1/8 inches, but I think you would probably be able to find something that's pretty close that would work. The next section, just very quickly, tools and parts for Tetrix. If you're working in the Tetrix system, you really want to have a set of tools. You want to go ahead and get all the different nut drivers that you're going to need for all the different screws that are used in the Tetrix system. So we've collected a bunch of these over the years. This is the red one is what we use for socket cap screws. This is what we use for set screws and hubs. And this is what we use for button head screws. And you can see they're marked with red, green, and blue. The red, green, and blue we chose because there was a book that was published 7 or 8 years ago about doing FTC, and that's the color scheme they had used. And they had a color scheme that was basically red cap for socket cap screws, blue buttons for button head screws, and green hubs or green something for the socket for the set screws. So that was their mnemonic for remembering. So we adopted that and we've kept that. Staying along with that, for all of our rev parts, we mark them in orange so that we can quickly identify that it's a rev driver intended for a rev part. And that's because that's the color that Rev uses as their corporate color. So these, again, there's just links here. If you're working in the Tetrix or Actobotics environment, again, one of the things I could never find out was what size set screws you needed for the hubs and for those components, and they turn out to be number 1032 set screws. So if you need to buy replacement set screws, because team members, it's really easy to lose set screws on hubs. So if you just want to buy a bunch of replacements, then you need number 10, 32 pitch or 32 threads per inch set screws, and those are easily gotten from McMaster Carr. And again, you can look for the nylon patch versions of those. And then a T-handled nut driver is often useful to have to get some extra torque on being able to tighten things. The last bit that I'll cover is just the general consumables. So you almost always need zip ties. You almost always need electrical tape. It's good to have permanent markers. A utility knife of some sort is useful to have. If you do have screws that are coming out of hubs or they're working themselves loose, I first of all recommend seeing if you can get the nylon patch screws. If not, get some Loctite. So Loctite is a liquid that you can put onto the screw before you thread it into something. And when it dries, it will tend to hold the screw in place. Generally, you'll want to get Loctite blue. The blue means it will hold it in place, but you can still undo it if you need to. If you get Loctite red, then you'll put it in and it's never coming out. To be aware of that. I also am going to, I haven't had a chance to add it to the list, but another item that I thought of earlier today that needed to be added is some cable wrap. And so this is the cable wrap, and it's just a piece of fabric at its heart. But what it's used for is when you have wires on your robot and you need to bundle them together, or you want to wrap them so that they route cleanly on your robot, then this is a really handy way to do it. Other versions of this include things called split loom tubing, or there's a variety of different wraps, but this is a really handy version of it. If you happen to have a Prusa 3D printer, this is the same stuff that comes with the Prusa, which is just really handy. In fact, let me switch to my side camera and I might get a better view of it here. This is the same stuff that comes on the Prusa. I didn't singe the ends of this one yet, so you can see it's coming unfrayed, but it's just a piece of plastic, of fabric, or a plastic-like, it's a weave, and you can easily open it up, wrap it around wires, and then put it back in place, and then wrap a couple of cable ties or zip ties around it, and it will keep your wires nice and clean. And that's especially important if you have wires that are running really long, like on elevators or things like that. And it certainly gives a much cleaner look to the robot. So I found this stuff on Amazon a few weeks ago. I had been looking for it for months, ever since I got my Prusa. It's like, hey, I want that for our robots. And I finally found a source on Amazon. So I'll put that link in this document as well. Okay, so that's what I had for the tools and things like that. Does anybody have any other comments or things they wanted to add, or questions, or tools that they know about that ought to be on this list, or anything like that? I sit here and pretend this is like a Chinese finger puzzle. So. Okay, well, again, that's just an introduction to the tools and stuff. These are the things that 7172 uses quite a lot, and so if you can find the funds to invest in some of these, then you'll make your robot build and maintenance productivity a lot higher, and that's really important in most competition seasons where you're working under time constraints. 3D printer recommendation came up as a question. So the gold standard for 3D printers is the Prusas. That's kind of the one that everybody talks about as being. So I'll just go to Prusa printers. So the Prusa, the Mark III, the MK3S, highly recommended. You can buy it as a kit and have it work as a kit and put it together. It's a good build. It's not a super easy build, but the build instructions are fun, and they give you free gummy bears. And I'm not joking about the gummy bear part. It's actually part of the build instructions is how many gummy bears that you're supposed to consume on each step. And so I bought one of these back in the spring when we all started going on lockdown, and I thought I would need a better 3D printer, and I love it. It works well. There are thousands of these worldwide. It has a lot of options and add-ons that you can get for it. So it's kind of the gold standard for the 3D printers. Go ahead.
Actually, Lockheed, in our innovation center, we have a bunch of those Prusas. I didn't know what they were, but as soon as I saw it,
as soon as you saw it,
that's it.
You knew that's what it was. And I'm sorry I didn't share my screen. I meant to share my screen, but
well,
you can see it there.
I brought it up on another window anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So yeah, the Prusas are they're really good. You can get them either with orange parts or with black parts. In this picture, just to zoom in, the parts that are all orange, those are 3D printed. So what Prusa does is they have like one of the world's largest 3D print farms, and they literally print out new printers that they sell. So those are all parts that were printed on Prusa printers that they sell. And so if any of them has any difficulty with them, they publish all of the models for them. So you can print your own versions of those parts. And so what many people do is they'll reprint the parts in a different filament color so you can get a custom color. And what a lot of hackers do, of course, is they'll print parts that have additional features on them. So there's a constant improvement that's there. So that's a nice aspect of the Prusa printers. It has a heated build plate with automatic leveling. It's super easy to use. Just it's the standard by which so many other 3D printers are now judged. The other printer that has come out recently is the Prusa Mini. And just to show how popular it is, you can see on my screen here, new orders have a lead time of 7 weeks. So if you order it today, you can expect to receive it 7 weeks from now. Once those were announced, they've been backlogged for anywhere from 1 to 2 months from their announcement. These are a lot less expensive, but they still have many of the same features as the MK3S. And so it's another good choice. As far as I know, it's not as expandable in terms of your options for being able to add things onto it and things like that. But it's certainly a cheaper option. So this is, if you're really on a budget, this is the one that I would consider next, if you can stand to wait 7 weeks for it to arrive. If you are looking for a super cheap printer, then the Monoprice Mini is available through Amazon, or it was available through Amazon. Is it still available through Amazon? It is. So the Monoprice Mini is another printer. It only has about a 4-inch by a 4-inch build plate, but it's $220, and it used to be that I could buy these and get them delivered next day if I was really in a rush to get a hold of a 3D printer. Like this one, if I order it tonight, it says I'll get it by Saturday. If I order it in the next hour and 24 minutes. There are a lot of people who talk badly about these printers, but my printers that I've had and that most people have, they say they're nice little workhorse printers. They're not particularly fast. They're got a small build plate, but if you're really on a budget, then it's a nice little workhorse. And so I had a pair of these earlier in the year, churning out ear guards for face masks, and they churned them out by the hundreds just without too much trouble. So that's another printer that's worth considering. So those are my personal printer recommendations. Is get the Prusas or get this one. There's one other that often comes up, and I forget what it's called, but it's in about the $300 to $400 price range as well. The only reason I would consider it over the Prusa Mini is that you might be able to get it quicker. But those are the printers I would go with. And the Prusa Minis, I do like the gummy bears. I just have to say the gummy bears were a nice touch. In fact, while we're waiting, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to cut in and stuff like that. But let me just pull up my gummy bear notes. Let's see here. Because it was just hilariously funny to go through and read it. Let's see, manuals. Oh, that's not the manual I need. So I'm just going there. You can go to the online manuals. You can also download the PDF, of course. So Mine was for the assembly introduction, and all the tools are there. Use the labels for reference. You can do the high resolution images. They talk about how to do the nuts. And yes, there are gummy bears. There they are, right? And they have very important steps that you need to include in the gummy bear parts of the build. So number one, they have calculated how many gummy bears you should consume. They warn you about overeating. They tell you to hide them, because if you leave them unattended, they tend to disappear, and so forth. And so at each of the different steps of assembly, there's a reward yourself step. And in the reward yourself step, they tell you, like in this one, they tell you to open the bag and split the bears into these groups, so that at each step, you know how many bears you're going to consume. So for once you've assembled the y-axis, you eat 15% of the bears. So anyway, it's really cute. Joe is doing a face. So basically, do not build this before bedtime. Joe's doing a face palm at my gummy bear thing.
Or if you're on a diet.
Or if you're on a diet. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It is
All
really
right,
good.
well,
I liked it.
Yeah, it was a nice little surprise when doing that build. And it was a fun build. All right, well, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties that happened earlier. There's a lot of technical difficulties at this house. Thank you all for joining. I hope that you'll be able to join on Saturday. On Saturday, again, my plan is to do something similar to what I did a couple of weeks ago, or back in August, with doing a demonstration of building a mechanism-based drivetrain on Rev components. When I did it before, I was using Fusion 360. On Saturday, I'm going to try and do it using Onshape CAD, because I got a chance to learn, and I wanted to experiment with Onshape CAD. So we'll go through with Onshape CAD as best we can. I'm not as fluent with it yet as I am with Fusion 360, but it'll give people an idea of what it's able to do, how it works, and whether it might work as an alternative to Fusion 360 for your teams. So have a good night. Again, if you think of topics you'd like to see covered, send them to me in email, post them to the Google group. And thank you all for joining us. Joe, thanks for all your comments and for carrying things during my internet outage.
Well, thank you for all your information.
You're welcome. And we'll see you all again soon. Have a good night.
Good night.